90s style video art.
Yeah, right. I started with Bill Viola, right?
Yeah.
That must have been fun.
It was intense.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
My name is Russ Nordman, and what I do as an artist is a little bit all over the map, but for the last few years I've done primarily photo collage and some experimental kind of drawings I do. But in the past I've done all kinds of different things like video installation art, just video art films, and way back when I was a painter. So lots of different things.
My name is Jody Boyer. I'm an artist and educator. I do multidisciplinary art, so I work in a lot of different mediums. I've worked with video, installation, photography, painting, sculpture, and even performance. The work that you see in this show is a combination of sculpture and photography, and also in a sense time-based work, because the sculptures melt and don't exist after the photographs are taken. So I think of them, though they're still images, as being relics of a time-based process.
I'm originally from Northeast Iowa, a little town. I grew up in a little town called Plainfield that was about 450 people. And then later I went to the big town, which was Waverly, about the size of Madison. It's about 5,700, something like that. So I grew up in a little town of Plainfield. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, particularly with this body of work, which I call Combines. When I was a kid, it was back in the 60s, 1960s, there was a little strip of land next to a grain elevator. And I was not a farm kid. So we lived in this little town, and I had no idea what the grain elevators were. And so we'd play in this field, and we'd just do all kinds of imaginative kind of games. And this structure that was next to us was always this kind of mystery to me. So I have to think that probably in some ways, the body of work that I'm doing now kind of touches on those kind of playful days when I was a kid, where we used our imagination to pretend lots of things. You know, it was the 1960s, so Star Trek just came out, and so, you know, all of the futuristic stuff was happening. So, you know, we used to just play around that structure and just have a lot of fun and just think about the future. And for some weird reason, 50 some years later, I end up using the same kind of structures in my art.
So I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and I moved to the Midwest 22 years ago. So right now I live in Western Iowa, and I teach in Omaha, Nebraska. Place has a lot to do with my work in terms of thinking about how we have a relationship to our environment and how we take care of our environment. This particular body of work is looking at ideas of domesticity or our homes, and also our relationship to our planet and climate change. So on another level, my work is about this place that we all share, right? This planet that we are on. So that's where I'm from, this planet.
What motivates me to create, I think, let's see if I can move away from the therapy version of the answer, which is basically, it's, you know, one way I get to feel normal is to make creative things. It feels like I have, you know, some sort of control in my life in a way. But I think I do it because I love the idea of taking some images, manipulating them a little bit, and they become these completely different things. And I like being surprised by the things I make. I think a lot of times in our lives, we spend a lot of time and days doing the same thing over and over again. And it's great to have an occupation that allows me to be surprised.
Well, I like to investigate ideas. So I'll have an idea and I want to see where it goes. The creative process is a motivator. I try to make art every single day. When I start making art, I don't always know where it's going to go. And I'll take an idea that might seem ridiculous and push it to see what I can do with that. And then once I have an idea that I feel I want to keep going with, I'll dedicate time to that idea. And that process of having an ongoing relationship with the creative process keeps me going. So with this body of work that's in this exhibition, I call this series Iceworks, and I've been making these since April of 2020, so that's 2 years. And I had a moment where I was making response artworks for my art classroom, my middle school art classroom, where I was finding a piece in a museum and then making an artwork in response to it. It became really popular in the pandemic. And I made a piece that was a frozen cube. And that piece sparked an idea in my mind, and I wanted to see where I could take that idea. And since then, I have been making these pieces every week for 2 years to kind of see where the concept can continue to go. The other thing that making work does for me is it's a form of creative therapy. So some people, they use retail therapy. Some people use actual therapy, which is great, get actual therapy. But the creative process can also be a form of therapy for us as people. There's been a lot of research recently, last 10, 15 years, that shows that even if you don't make good art or what somebody might think is good art, the act of the creative process can change how your brain works. And if I don't make art, I kind of don't feel alive, So I'm driven by that relationship to art making as well.
It's changed a lot. I mean, especially jumping from medium to medium, I think the emphasis of the work changed over time, and usually had something to do with the state of my brain at the time. But I've always been probably the one common thread in everything. Like I said earlier, I have lots of different mediums I kind of played with, but probably the common thread in all of it is this sort of interest in mechanisms or the mechanics of things or structures or machines and things like that. I mean, I think that's always kind of been there in everything that I've done. As far as what's changed, I think I've gone from back in the day doing very big sort of difficult pieces to move, kind of constructive assemblage kind of sculpture stuff to just basically creating 2D sculpture on the walls. What motivates me to create? What drives me to make things? The thing that always drove me was basically I wanted to create with my hands. In my mind, there's always these sort of playgrounds going on. I'm putting images together. It's almost like, I guess the term would be now in game design, world building. In a sense, I think artists always have always been doing like world building in their heads. And making art for me was a way of sort of getting that out of my head. You do it long enough, and those reasons are still all under there, but it's like you sort of forget about why you do it. So it's a little bit like breathing after a while. You just do it. I mean, it's an interesting question because it's like it's been so long since I've had to think about that in a way, because it's just part of my life right now. It always has been for like 3/4 of my life.
I change my style all the time based upon a material or a process that I'm interested in. My way of working used to be large-scale installations. I used to do a lot of video work. Russ and I would actually make installations together, and we would take up entire spaces in museums. And it was great work to do, but also we'd have to drive all that to the museum, install it, take it down, take it home. And as our family grew, that became really problematic. And so my work became smaller, and it became more, in a sense, traditional, focusing on creating an image, a 2D image, because I needed to make work that I could also finish while balancing the roles of mother and educator and artist. So life makes your style change, right? And what you experience in life makes your style change too.
That's a really good question. How do I define success as an artist? when I was young, I thought the success you had as an artist was you made it into the magazines or you got into certain shows and things like that. It was very much this sort of ideal that gets presented to students and to young artists about what it means to be successful. And I think over time that has evolved and changed. That there's all kinds of different artists that I don't have to be on the cover of an art magazine. I don't have to show in New York and things like that. And so, in a way, I had to kind of disassemble that illusion of what success actually means and sort of make it more personal in a way. And so, I think that one of the things that happened was very practical things like, wow, I sold a piece of work, I can get my sewer repaired now. So that was sort of the change in the measure of success. And the other is that, frankly, I feel very fortunate. It's like, yeah, I haven't been on the cover of Art in America or something like that, but it's like I've been able to do this thing that I love doing for like the last 40 years. And, you find your own sort of niche for success. As long as you keep making the stuff, you're successful in my book at this point.
For me, success really is about primarily maintaining the creative process in my life and making work that's meaningful to me, that I'm also satisfied with, right? I tell my middle school students, everybody can make art and everybody's art's gonna look different. But what's most important is not how it looks, but that you have integrity with it, that with that process of making. How I draw a portrait is gonna look different than how you draw a portrait. But if we all have integrity with that process, that's success, right?
How is art important to society? I think that it's important because it's a little bit like having a friend. Art is a little bit like if you see that friend and walk it up to him, you go, but how are you really doing? Art is a little bit of that check-in of how are we really doing here? And emotionally, or how are you seeing the world? And I think we're kind of society's, response to being asked that. I think we're the emotions of society. We're the part of it that's trying to express it, or talk about things that are hard sometimes, and sometimes we just want to talk about how beautiful things are. I think that's what we do for society or in society. I'm a little bit of a romantic when it comes to art, I guess.
Well, I think art is is one way that we share our experiences and we gain understanding between people who might not have the same experiences. I think it's also how we can have cultural understanding, how we can have intergenerational understanding. I think it's also connected deeply to who we are, regardless of your religion, even if you have no religion and you're atheist. I think the aesthetic experience is a huge part of how we process the world around us, right? And so when artists make beautiful or even unbeautiful things, they help tell the stories of who we are or what we experience and help us have a better understanding of each other.
What advice do I have for aspiring artists? I think the thing that I have found is that you just have to keep making things. Even when it seems like it's not going anywhere, you just got to keep making things. Because that is, if this is truly what you want to be and how you want to be in the world, it's something you need to do for yourself. And sometimes I think, especially in the arts, it's really hard to see where it's going to go. I have no doubt that if you love making things and if you keep going forward with that, even if you don't know where it's going to go, you don't know what it's going to do, like filmmakers making films, you don't know what it's going to happen with it, but you just want to make it. If you have that spirit in you and you keep going, something will happen. Because it may not be what you expected, but it may be a completely different kind of life, but it's like it's probably going to be something that's worthwhile. That would probably be my one thing. So you just got to keep going.
I think my first advice is to put in the time and the effort and to follow your ideas. So there's a myth that artists are somehow geniuses and that it's poof, you just have it. Just like a musician or an athlete, you have to do it practice. You have to practice. So make time every single day for your studio or for practicing videography or painting. And then no matter how ridiculous or silly you think your ideas are, believe in your ideas and let them grow. If you take a seed and you plant it, but you don't allow it to have sun or water or time, it will never come into existence. And I think it took me a really long time as an artist to realize that I needed to have the grace with myself to allow my ideas to grow, and I needed to put the time into those ideas.
Yeah, it's and those are tough questions, because I think so. If I've so often in my life I've just kept making things, I had no idea where they'd end up, and you just keep going. You end up in Madison, South Dakota, hanging a show. Never thought I'd do that. So.